The most feared man in the city had faced enemies, betrayal, and impossible odds. But nothing prepared him for the moment he found the one person who always protected him lying alone on a beach. Damian Blackwood stood frozen at the edge of the shoreline, the cold ocean wind moving through his black coat as waves crashed against the sand beneath his feet. For a man known for controlling every room he entered, every negotiation he led, and every decision placed before him, there was something terrifying about the silence surrounding him now. Because lying a few yards away was Olivia Carter, his personal secretary of 3 years. The woman who arrived before everyone else. The woman who stayed late when everyone had already gone home. The woman who knew every detail of his impossible schedule, every pressure behind his empire, and every responsibility he carried on his shoulders. But standing there, looking at her exhausted face and the broken phone beside her, Damian realized something that struck deeper than any business loss ever could. He barely knew the woman who had spent years standing beside him. "Olivia," he whispered, his voice lower than anyone had ever heard it. The name felt unfamiliar coming from his lips, not because he had forgotten it, but because he had rarely said it with meaning. To him, she had always been the person behind the calendar, the quiet voice reminding him of meetings, the steady presence holding together the chaos of his world. He had noticed her work. He had trusted her judgment. But he had never stopped to wonder what happened when the person who always helped everyone else needed someone to help her. The morning had started like any other day. Damian Blackwood had been reviewing documents inside his private office overlooking Manhattan, surrounded by expensive furniture, polished glass, and the kind of luxury most people only saw in magazines. Olivia had placed his coffee on the desk exactly where he liked it, organized the files he needed, and quietly informed him about a problem that required his attention. She had looked tired. He remembered that now. A little too tired. But when he asked if everything was handled, she gave him the same small smile she always gave and said, "Everything is fine, Mr. Blackwood." Those words haunted him now, because Olivia had always said everything was fine, even when it wasn't. A call from a local rescue team had interrupted his afternoon, informing him that a woman matching Olivia's description had been found near the shore. They didn't know why she was there. They only knew she had been carrying something important. When Damian arrived, he saw the small object resting near her hand. An old silver ring. His family ring. A piece of his past that had disappeared more than 10 years ago. His expression changed instantly. Why did Olivia have it? Why was she protecting something connected to his family? And why had she risked herself to keep it safe? The questions filled his mind as he looked toward the ocean, the waves reflecting the gray sky above. For the first time in years, Damian Blackwood felt something stronger than anger. He felt regret. The kind that came when someone finally understood the value of what they had ignored. Olivia had never asked for recognition. She had never demanded respect. She had simply stood beside him, quietly carrying burdens no one else noticed. And now, as the most powerful man in the room knelt beside the person he had failed to see, one truth became impossible to ignore. The woman everyone overlooked had been the one person protecting him all along. The beach fell silent except for the sound of the waves. And Damian Blackwood, a man who had spent his entire life making others listen, finally found himself listening to the one voice he had never taken the time to hear. Before Damian Blackwood became the man everyone feared, before his name carried weight in every powerful room across New York, there was one person who saw the human being hidden behind the reputation. Her name was Olivia Carter. And for 3 years, she had been the only person who understood the difference between the man the world saw and the man who quietly carried the weight of it all. The first time Olivia entered Damian's office, she did not look impressed by the luxury surrounding her. She did not stare at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. She did not seem amazed by the expensive artwork, the dark wood furniture, or the silent efficiency of the people working around him. She simply walked in with a small notebook in her hand and a calm expression on her face. "Mr. Blackwood, your 9 o'clock meeting has been moved to 10. The investors requested additional time to review the documents, and I reorganized your afternoon schedule to make room." Damian had looked up from his desk, slightly surprised. Most people who worked near him tried too hard to impress him. They spoke carefully, laughed too loudly, and avoided making decisions without permission. Olivia was different. She did not seek his approval. She simply solved problems. At first, Damien saw her as another employee. Someone efficient. Someone reliable. Nothing more. But over time, small moments began revealing a different story. Olivia was always the first person to notice when someone in the office was struggling. She quietly helped a new assistant understand complicated tasks. She remembered birthdays that everyone else forgot. She brought extra coffee for the security staff who worked long hours and always thanked them by name. None of it was dramatic. None of it demanded attention. That was exactly why nobody noticed. Olivia Carter was a person who moved through life leaving kindness behind her without waiting for anyone to applaud. Damien noticed her organization. He noticed her intelligence. He noticed that his entire schedule somehow became easier whenever she was nearby. But he never asked the most important question. Who was Olivia when she was not working for him? The answer was hidden behind the same quiet smile she showed every day. Olivia had grown used to being overlooked. Not because she lacked confidence, but because she understood the world often judged people before learning their stories. She knew what it felt like to enter a room and become invisible. So she built her strength in silence. She learned to observe. She learned to listen. She learned that sometimes the person speaking the least was the one understanding the most. That was why she recognized changes in Damien before anyone else did. She noticed when he was carrying stress he refused to admit. She noticed when important decisions weighed on him. She noticed when the powerful man everyone feared was simply exhausted. But she never crossed boundaries. She never asked questions he did not want to answer. She never tried to become important in his world. She only did what she believed was right. And now, standing on that beach, Damien remembered every small moment he had ignored. The way Olivia stayed late to finish work no one thanked her for. The way she protected confidential information without expecting anything in return. The way she always said, "I will handle it," whenever problems appeared. The woman he thought was simply managing his schedule had actually been carrying a responsibility far greater than anyone realized. As the medical team prepared to move Olivia for further care, Damien looked down at the silver ring still resting safely in her hand. For the first time, he wondered how many sacrifices she had made, while he was too distracted to see them. The answer was painful. Too many. The ocean continued moving behind him, steady and endless. And Damien Blackwood finally understood that Olivia Carter had never been invisible. He was the one who had failed to truly look. The room was quiet when Damien Blackwood arrived at the private medical center. The same man who once walked through crowded rooms surrounded by attention now moved through the hallway without noticing anyone around him. His focus was only on one person, Olivia Carter. Hours had passed since he found her near the shore, yet the image remained in his mind. The woman who always appeared calm, always prepared, always in control, had been the one person he never thought could need help. Damien stood outside her room, looking through the glass window as doctors checked her condition. He had spent years learning how to read people, how to recognize hidden motives, how to identify weakness before it became a problem. But Olivia had never been a weakness. She had been the strongest person near him, and he had never realized it. A few feet away, his assistant placed a small folder on the table. "Mr. Blackwood, this was found. With Miss Carter's belongings." Damien opened it slowly. Inside were notes, schedules, and records written in Olivia's careful handwriting. At first glance, it looked like another collection of work documents. But as he continued reading, something changed in his expression. Olivia had been tracking problems he never knew existed. She had noticed unusual changes in company reports. She had marked conversations that seemed inconsistent. She had quietly organized information that protected the people around her without making herself part of the story. She had not been trying to gain power. She had been trying to prevent problems before they reached anyone else. Damien turned another page and stopped. A sentence written at the bottom caught his attention. "Mr. Blackwood does not need more people protecting his position. He needs people reminding him that he is still human." For a long moment Damien said nothing. The words were simple, but they carried a weight he was not prepared for. Most people around him saw his success. They saw the wealth, the influence, the authority. Very few people cared about the person underneath all of it. Olivia had. She always had. 3 years earlier, when she first became his secretary, others had warned her that working closely with Damian Blackwood required distance. They told her not to get involved. They told her powerful people only valued results. But Olivia had never treated him like a title. She treated him like a person. She remembered small details. She knew when a meeting could wait. She knew when silence was better than another conversation. She understood that behind every decision was a man carrying responsibilities he rarely admitted. Damian looked down at the folder again, realizing something uncomfortable. He had spent years believing loyalty was measured by obedience. Olivia had shown him that true loyalty was different. It was having the courage to care even when nobody noticed. The next morning, Damian received another piece of information. The silver ring found with Olivia was not random. It was connected to his family's past, a memory he believed had disappeared forever. Olivia had been searching for answers, not for herself, but because she believed the truth mattered to him. That discovery changed everything. Why would someone with no personal gain continue protecting a man who rarely thanked her? Why would someone who stayed in the background risk being misunderstood just to help him? Damian returned to Olivia's room and sat quietly beside the door. For once he did not have a plan. He did not have a strategy. He did not have the perfect words. He only had the realization that the person he had always considered an employee had become someone whose absence would leave a silence he could not ignore. Outside the window, the city continued moving as if nothing had changed. But inside that quiet room, Damian Blackwood's understanding of loyalty began to change forever. Because sometimes the person standing beside you is not there because they need your power. Sometimes they are there because they see the person you forgot you were. Damian Blackwood had spent his entire life believing that control was the difference between victory and failure. Every decision was calculated. Every conversation had a purpose. Every person around him had a role. But sitting beside Olivia Carter's hospital room, he realized there was one thing he had never controlled: the possibility of losing someone who mattered. The thought unsettled him more than any business challenge ever had. Because Olivia was not someone who demanded attention. She was not someone who fought for recognition. She was the person who quietly carried responsibilities while everyone else focused on the results. And now Damian finally understood how much he had depended on her. When Olivia regained consciousness, the first thing she did was not ask about herself. She looked toward Damian and quietly asked, "Did everything get handled?" Those 5 words stopped him. After everything she had been through, after waking up in a hospital room with no idea what had happened around her, her first concern was still whether his world was safe. Damian looked at her carefully. The same woman who organized his life, protected his time, and solved problems before he even noticed them was now lying there exhausted yet still thinking about everyone else. "You should be worried about yourself," Damian finally said. His voice was softer than usual. Olivia gave a small smile. "I am fine, Mr. Blackwood." For a moment Damian almost reacted the way he always had. He almost accepted those words and moved on. But this time was different. He had heard them before. He had heard them every day for 3 years. And now he understood that those words were not always the truth. They were often a shield. A way for Olivia to protect others from worrying about her. Later that afternoon, Damian reviewed every detail connected to what happened. The information Olivia had gathered revealed something troubling. Someone close to his organization had been hiding important details from him. Someone who understood his routines. Someone who knew exactly where weaknesses could appear. But what bothered Damian most was not the discovery itself. It was the realization that Olivia had noticed the signs before anyone else. She had carried that responsibility alone because she believed bringing attention to herself would create more problems. Damian walked through his office that evening, the same place where Olivia had spent countless hours helping him. Her desk remained exactly as she left it. A neat stack of documents. A small notebook. A coffee cup she always used during long nights. Ordinary things. Things he had never paid attention to. Until now. He picked up the notebook and saw pages filled with reminders that were not about meetings or schedules. They were about people. A note reminding him to call an employee whose family was going through a difficult time. A reminder that a staff member deserved recognition for years of dedication. Small details that revealed something Damien had missed completely. Olivia did not simply manage his calendar. She protected the people around him. She saw value in everyone, even when others did not. That evening, Damien made a decision that surprised even himself. He canceled every meeting that could wait. For the first time in years, he stopped focusing on his empire and focused on the person who had quietly protected it. When he returned to Olivia's room, she looked surprised to see him again. "You do not have to stay here," she said. Damien looked at her, silent for a moment. The old Damien would have walked away. The old Damien would have considered emotions a distraction. But that man was beginning to change. "I know," he answered. "I want to." The room became quiet. Olivia looked away, unsure how to respond. And Damien realized something that felt almost impossible for him to admit. The person he had always viewed as part of his world had become someone he could not imagine his world without. For the first time, the most powerful man in the city was not searching for control. He was searching for a way to make things right. For the first time in years, Damien Blackwood sat in a quiet room without thinking about business, reputation, or the countless responsibilities waiting for him outside. His attention was fixed on the woman resting in front of him, the same woman who had spent 3 years making sure everyone else was protected. Olivia Carter had always been the person who remembered everything. But now Damien was discovering the things she never told anyone. After Olivia's condition improved, Damien carefully reviewed the information she had collected before everything changed. Each page revealed another piece of a story he had never seen. Olivia had not only managed his schedule, she had been paying attention to the people around him, noticing problems before they became disasters, and quietly helping whenever she could. One note caught his attention. It was about a former employee who had been struggling after a difficult family situation. Olivia had found a way to connect him with support without ever mentioning her involvement. Another page showed that she had corrected mistakes in important documents before they reached Damien's desk, protecting the company from unnecessary complications. She had done all of it without asking for praise, recognition, or even a simple thank you. Damien leaned back in his chair, staring at the pages in silence. For most of his life, people approached him because of what he could provide. His influence, his resources, his position. But Olivia had never looked at him as a powerful man who could change her life. She looked at him as someone who needed to remember the value of other people. That realization stayed with him. The next morning, Damien visited Olivia again. She was sitting near the window, watching the city outside while holding a cup of tea. The sunlight touched the room softly, creating a peaceful moment that felt completely different from the world Damien knew. "You should not be reading reports while you are recovering," Damien said. Olivia looked down at the papers in her hands and gave a small smile. Old habits. Damien noticed something then. Even after everything, she was still worried about unfinished tasks. "Why did you never tell me?" he asked. Olivia looked confused. "Tell you what?" "Everything you were doing. All the things you handled. All the times you helped people without anyone knowing." Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she answered honestly, "Because it was never about me." Her words stayed in the room. Damien had heard many speeches about loyalty and dedication, but Olivia said it so simply that it affected him more than anything else. She was not trying to appear noble. She was just explaining how she lived. "People deserve help when they need it," she continued. "That does not mean they have to know who helped them." Damien looked away, processing her answer. In his world, every action usually came with a reason. Every favor had an expectation attached. But Olivia had shown him another way. A way built on compassion instead of calculation. Later that day, Damien met with his closest advisors. They expected him to discuss business matters. They expected plans, decisions, and strategies. Instead, he asked a different question. "How many people around us are struggling? And we never noticed." The room became quiet. Nobody had an answer. Because for years, they had focused on protecting the organization while ignoring the people inside it. Olivia's kindness had exposed something Damien did not want to admit. Power could build walls, but it could not replace understanding. When Damien returned to the hospital room that evening, Olivia looked at him with curiosity. "Something changed," she said. Softly. Damien paused. Few people had ever recognized his emotions before he spoke. But Olivia always had. I realized I spent years looking for people I could trust, he said. And I never noticed the person who was already there. Olivia did not respond immediately. She simply looked at him with the same calm expression she had always carried. The room became silent. And in that moment, Damien understood the greatest truth Olivia had shown him. The people who ask for the least are often the ones who give the most. Damien Blackwood had spent years building a world where emotions were carefully hidden, and every decision was based on logic. He believed feelings made people vulnerable, and vulnerability created mistakes. But Olivia Carter had slowly proven something he never expected. Sometimes the strongest decisions came from the heart. Several days had passed since the moment Damien realized how much Olivia had done without recognition. Her recovery was moving forward, but the questions surrounding the silver ring and the information she had collected remained unanswered. Damien could not ignore the feeling that Olivia had discovered something important before everything happened. Something connected to his family. Something she believed he needed to know. One afternoon, he returned to the office carrying the same folder he had found among Olivia's belongings. For the first time, he did not sit behind his large desk and expect answers from others. Instead, he carefully reviewed every note himself. The handwriting was familiar, calm, organized, thoughtful. It was the same style Olivia used every day when managing his impossible schedule. But now he saw the person behind the writing. Not a secretary, not an assistant. A woman who paid attention to details everyone else ignored. Hidden among the documents was a small collection of research about the silver ring. Olivia had traced its history back through old company records and family documents. She had discovered that the ring belonged to Damien's father and had disappeared years earlier during a difficult period in his family's life. The discovery surprised him. But what surprised him more was why Olivia cared. She had no connection to his family history. She had nothing to gain from finding the truth. Yet she spent countless hours searching because she believed some things deserved to be understood. When Damien visited Olivia that evening, he brought the folder with him. She immediately recognized it. "You found it," she said quietly. Damien looked at her. "You knew about this?" Olivia nodded slowly. "I found references to it while organizing old records. I thought it might matter to you." "Why?" Damien asked. The question came out more emotional than he expected. Olivia looked at him with a calm expression. "Because I noticed you always changed when people mentioned your family." The answer caught him off guard. Damien was used to people noticing his position, his reputation, his influence. But Olivia noticed things he tried to hide. She noticed the memories behind his silence. She noticed the moments when the powerful man disappeared and the person underneath appeared. "You were trying to protect me from something you did not understand," Damien said. Olivia looked away. "I was trying to help you find something you lost." The simplicity of her answer stayed with him. She was not looking for appreciation. She was not waiting for a reward. She simply believed helping someone was enough. Damien sat quietly for a moment. Then he said something he rarely allowed himself to say. "I am sorry." Olivia looked surprised. "For what?" "For seeing your work but not seeing you." The room became still. Those words were not easy for Damien. Apologies were rare in his world. Admitting a mistake required something stronger than pride. It required honesty. Olivia did not immediately respond. She simply watched him, as if trying to understand whether he truly meant it. "You are different," she finally said. Damien looked at her. "Different how?" "Before you always wanted solutions. Now you are trying to understand." Her words revealed the change he had been feeling but could not explain. For the first time, Damien was not searching for control. He was searching for connection. Later that night, he placed the silver ring carefully inside a secure case. But the object itself was no longer the most important discovery. The real discovery was the person who had found it. The person who had spent years standing quietly beside him. The person who reminded him that behind every title, every achievement, and every powerful image, there was still a human being who needed kindness. And Damien Blackwood finally understood that Olivia Carter was never just the person who managed his life. She was the person who helped him remember how to live it. Damian Blackwood had spent years believing that trust was something earned through strength, loyalty, and results. But Olivia Carter had shown him another kind of trust. The kind that existed without demands. The kind that remained even when nobody was watching. And now, as Damian searched deeper into the information Olivia had gathered, he discovered something that changed the way he saw everyone around him. The problem had never been outside his organization. It had been hidden among the people closest to him. The documents Olivia collected revealed unusual changes in company operations. Small details that most people would ignore. Missing information. Unclear decisions. Conversations that did not match official reports. Olivia had noticed every inconsistency because that was who she was. She listened carefully. She watched quietly. She understood people before they realized they were revealing anything. Damian brought the information to his most trusted advisors. The same people who had worked beside him for years. The same people who believed they understood how he thought. But this time, Damian did not walk into the room as the untouchable leader everyone expected. He walked in as someone searching for the truth. Before we discuss anything else, I want to know why Olivia Carter was the only person who noticed these problems. The question created immediate silence. Nobody had an answer. Because the truth was uncomfortable. They had all focused on protecting the company's image, but Olivia had focused on protecting the people inside it. As the meeting continued, more details came forward. The person responsible for hiding important information was not a stranger. It was someone who had been close to Damian for years. Someone who understood his habits and knew how the organization worked. Damian listened carefully, but his thoughts kept returning to Olivia. She had discovered the problem before anyone else. She had every reason to stay silent and protect herself. Instead, she chose to step forward. She chose responsibility over comfort. Later that evening, Damian visited Olivia again. She was sitting near the window, recovering while reading a book she had brought from home. For a moment, the scene felt ordinary, peaceful, almost impossible to connect with the complicated world Damian came from. "You knew something was wrong," Damian said. Olivia looked up. "I suspected something was wrong. And you carried that information alone." She lowered her eyes. "I was trying to be careful." Damian understood what she meant. Olivia had spent years working around powerful people. She knew that speaking too quickly could create misunderstandings. She knew that not everyone welcomed difficult truths. But she still chose to search for answers because she believed honesty mattered. "You could have walked away," Damian said. "You could have protected yourself." Olivia looked at him and gave a quiet smile. "That is not who I am." Those words stayed with him. Damian had met many people who wanted something from him. Money, influence, opportunities. But Olivia wanted none of those things. She wanted people to do what was right. For the first time, Damian saw the courage hidden beneath her gentle nature. It was not loud. It did not demand attention. Simply existed. The following morning, Damian made a decision. He would not allow Olivia's efforts to disappear behind closed doors. He would make sure everyone understood what she had done, not because she needed recognition, but because people deserved to know the truth. When Damian looked across the city from his office window, he thought about how different everything felt now. The same buildings, the same responsibilities, the same challenges, but something inside him had changed. He no longer measured people by their position or their usefulness. He measured them by their character. And Olivia Carter had shown him that. The quietest person in the room could sometimes carry the greatest strength. The woman everyone overlooked had become the person Damian trusted most. And soon the entire organization would understand why. The morning arrived quietly over Manhattan, but inside Damian Blackwood's headquarters, everyone could feel that something had changed. The atmosphere was different. The usual confidence, the familiar routines, and the certainty that surrounded the organization had been replaced by something far more serious. Everyone knew Damian was preparing for a meeting, but nobody knew what kind of decision the man who always valued control was about to make. For years, people believed Damian measured loyalty by results. They believed respect came from power, position, and influence. But Olivia Carter had changed the way he saw the world around him. She had shown him that loyalty was not about standing beside someone when everything was easy. It was about doing the right thing when nobody was watching. Inside the conference room, Damien sat at the end of the table. The people around him expected a discussion about business. They expected numbers, strategies, and plans for the future. Instead, Damien placed a simple folder in front of them. Olivia's notes. The information she had collected. The truth she had quietly protected. Before we continue, Damien said, his voice calm, there is something everyone here needs to understand. The room became silent. For years, we focused on protecting this organization. But we forgot something important. An organization is not built by buildings, money, or reputation. It is built by people. Nobody spoke, because everyone understood where the conversation was going. Damien continued. He explained how Olivia had noticed problems nobody else had seen. How she had worked quietly without expecting recognition. How she had protected the company not because she wanted a higher position, but because she believed responsibility mattered. The person who had been ignored by many people in that room was now the person everyone had to listen to. When Olivia entered the conference room later that day, she looked uncomfortable with the tension. She had never wanted a spotlight. She had never searched for praise. She simply wanted things to be handled properly. Damien noticed that immediately. The old Damien would have seen that as a weakness. Now he understood it was one of her greatest strengths. Olivia, he said, standing up. Everyone turned toward her. There is something I should have said a long time ago. Thank you. The words were simple. But coming from Damien Blackwood, they carried meaning. Olivia looked surprised. For years, she had worked behind the scenes, making sure others succeeded. Hearing appreciation from the person she supported every day felt unfamiliar. She nodded quietly. I was only doing my job. Damien shook his head. No. You were doing much more than that. The room remained silent. Everyone understood they were witnessing something rare. Not a powerful man giving an order. Not a leader demanding loyalty. A person finally acknowledging another person's value. Later, Damien reviewed the final details of the situation. The truth was clear. The people who ignored Olivia had underestimated the one person who understood everything. They had mistaken kindness for weakness. They had mistaken silence for ignorance. But Olivia had never been powerless. She simply never needed to prove her strength. That evening, Damien visited her office. Her desk was still organized exactly the way she liked it. The same notebook. The same carefully arranged files. The same small reminders that showed how much she cared about the details others overlooked. Things will be different now, Damien said. Olivia looked up. Different how? Damien paused before answering. You will never be invisible here again. Outside, the city continued moving beneath the evening lights. But inside that office, something had changed forever. The person who had always stood quietly behind the powerful man was finally being seen. And Damien Blackwood understood that true leadership was not about making people follow you. It was about recognizing the people who helped you become better. Months later, the city of New York looked the same from the outside. The streets were still crowded, the lights still reflected against the glass buildings, and people still whispered the name Damien Blackwood with the same respect they always had. But inside his world, everything had changed. The greatest change was not in his company, his reputation, or his influence. It was in the way he looked at the people around him. Before Olivia Carter entered his life, Damien believed strength meant carrying every burden alone. He believed leaders had to appear untouchable. He believed emotions were distractions that could weaken important decisions. But Olivia had shown him something he never expected. Real strength was not hiding behind power. Real strength was having the courage to care. Olivia had fully returned to work, but things were different now. Her desk was still in the same place. Her schedule was still organized with the same precision. She still arrived early and handled problems before they became serious. But one thing had changed. Nobody overlooked her anymore. People listened when she spoke. They valued her ideas. They recognized the quiet intelligence that had always been there. Damien made sure of it. Not because Olivia asked for attention. She never did. He did it because he finally understood that recognition was not about making someone feel important. It was about giving people the respect they had already earned. One afternoon, Damien found Olivia reviewing documents in her office. The sunlight moved across the room, creating the same peaceful atmosphere that had surrounded her from the beginning. "You know," Damien said, standing near the doorway, "you still work too much." Olivia smiled slightly. "Someone has to keep things organized." Damien looked around the room. Once he would have seen only paperwork and schedules. Now he saw memories. Every note, every reminder, every small detail represented the care she had given without expecting anything back. "I used to think people worked for me because of what I could offer them," Damien said. Olivia looked up. "And now?" He paused. The answer was simple, but it carried years of change. "Now I know the best people stay because of who you are, not what you have." Olivia remained quiet for a moment. She understood how difficult those words were for him to say. Damien Blackwood was not a man who easily admitted mistakes, but he had changed because someone showed him a different way to see the world. Later that evening, Damien placed the silver ring inside a special display case in his office. It was no longer a reminder of something lost. It had become a reminder of something found. Not an object, not a memory, person. A person who had walked into his life quietly and changed everything without ever asking for anything. Olivia had never tried to become powerful. She had never tried to stand above anyone. She simply believed every person deserved kindness and respect. And somehow, that simple belief had reached the one person who needed to understand it most. Damien stood near the window, looking over the city below. For years, people had called him powerful because of what he controlled. But now he understood something different. A person's true value was not measured by how many people feared them. It was measured by how many lives became better because they were there. Across the office, Olivia continued working quietly, unaware of how much she had changed the man beside her. But Damien knew. He knew the woman everyone once overlooked had given him something more valuable than success. She had given him perspective. She had reminded him that behind every title, every achievement, and every carefully built image, there was still a human being searching for meaning. And that day, the world remembered that dignity does not come from power. It comes from the way we choose to see one another.